The runs are on the board. It's not quite a do or die encounter because the pleasure or one of the perks of having finished 1-2 means the team that loses this game will still get a shot at playing the winner of tomorrow's game. So as I said, not quite do or die, but nonetheless, it's a big game, the first qualifier, and runs on the board for the team that lost the toss. In this case, it was Delhi. Quick reminder, qualifier number 172 for 5 in their 20 overs. Early wickets for Hazelwood, a couple for Jadeja and Moeen Ali, but all that happened very early on in the piece. And once Prithvi Shaw put the platform on, it was the Pant Hetmyer show in the second half that took them to what looks like a pretty decent total. How do the experts feel? We'll go straight and find out on Cricbuzz Live in association with our fantasy partner, My 11th Circle. Now, my plan was to have gone to whichever of the two experts actually won our prediction at the start. I'm in a dilemma because we finished dead in between. 167, 5 makes 172, plus 5 makes 177. So who wants to go first, gentlemen?
Polygaga.
Age before beauty.
So you go first, Polygaga.
I'm much younger, no. I think they'll be happy. Okay. I think they'll be happy. Yeah, they'll be very happy with that performance. I think if you look at the Chennai batting lineup, they'll be thinking if they can get some early wickets, they can really put that middle order under pressure to be able to try and chase that down. And the other thing I think they'll be very happy about is now that they've got Tom Curran in. It makes sense to me having a look at the surface, also having a look at the short boundaries, whether the spinners will be able to bowl the full 8 overs if you've got left-hander, right-hander combination. So I think the luxury of having him with his backhand variations and all the slow balls might serve them well with that shorter boundary, much like what they saw from someone like a Bravo.
Well, let's talk about the Delhi batting, Ajay. Obviously, you were talking about runs on the board in the big match in the context of a toss, but in this case, lose the toss, asked to bat first. You would take this at the start of the 20 overs, score in excess of 170?
Yeah, I mean, I think Delhi probably would take that. I mean, the way they approached that innings, if you look at it, I mean, they started off brilliantly. I mean, 30 of the first 3 overs, luck going their way for sure. A couple of, edges also going for boundaries. And as soon as, I saw that first wicket fall, second wicket fall, and you saw Akshar Patel walked in. What does that tell you? I mean, when I'm, in the opposition, you look at that move and you say, listen, do they think they're short or do they think they're, too many? I mean, they feel there are too many balls left in this game. And the way he approached his innings, it probably looked like that. So I think Delhi probably wasn't aiming that high. But, with that partnership with captain and Hetmyer, 80 of 8 overs. I mean, 8 overs at that stage where 4 wickets were down, they put on 80 runs. I mean, that partnership really turned it around. I think Delhi would be more than happy. I don't think that they looked at a number bigger than this. And that's why probably they got to this number as well. They played it correctly when those 4 wickets were down. Rishabh Pant and Hetmyer just, took whatever you were ready to give. It was a waiting game that was going on between Dhoni and Rishabh Pant and, Hetmyer. But you got to say today, I think the young boys probably did the right thing and got away.
Shaun, you saw that little record on top of the partnership which said the highest 5th wicket partnership in any playoff game in the history of the tournament. Now that says a lot because in playoffs we've had hundreds, we've had big innings, but to have a big partnership in the middle order, that I think says a lot about this innings.
Yeah, it was a fantastic partnership, and it also says or contributes to the pressure you're under in those middle overs. When you're coming into the crease, often you're trying to post something, what you should or shouldn't do. It needs clear decision making, taking the right options, not playing with too much risk. And often when you're chasing, it's even more the case. So to have held their head and held their nerve, I thought they did well. They didn't panic. They didn't go too early. They got themselves in so that they knew if they decided to go, that they'd be able to clear boundaries and hit it well. So I think that they managed it beautifully. I think they also were very aware that maybe not that much hitability to come after them, and that at the crease, when you got Curran hasn't played, Ashwin, what sort of big hitting can he do? He can probably nudge it around. So I think they took their responsibility, and as spectators, as the coaching staff, that's what you want to see. You want to see them take that responsibility, shoulder it, and that strike rate in the last 4 was where they made it pay.
And I think if you have a look at the progression, the story it doesn't tell you is when Pant and Hetmyer started out, they were basically rotating the strike, which is sort of against their nature. Ajay, they are both explosive, flamboyant, sometimes over the top kind of batsmen. But two of them to rein themselves in and then go when they needed to go was refreshing to see.
It was. I mean, you see that, with players growing as the experience comes in, you expect them to keep doing the right things more often. And I think, at that stage, in fact, even Dhoni and CSK were probably waiting for them to make a mistake. And I think because both of them are flamboyant, as you rightly said, and they're capable of hitting those big sixes. So, today probably is a lesson learned by them as well. In the future, this is all that they need to do. When you've got that kind of reputation or opposition waiting for you to make a mistake, all you got to do is take it till those last 20, 24 balls, and once you get to that stage, then anything is possible, and you already had a safe total. So I thought they both played very smartly, and if I feel they've taken the game away. CSK will really need to have a great start to get anywhere close to this now.
Yeah, it's an entire tournament we've been talking about, the 140, 150 type scores. It's not been like the first half of the tournament, and it is also a playoff game. What about the Chennai bowling? Is there something maybe they could have done differently if they had to do this innings all over again? Deepak Chahar, Chennai fans will always look at him taking wickets up front. Whenever he does that, 1, 2, 3, opposition under pressure. Didn't happen, Shaun. How much were they behind the 8 ball because of that?
Yeah, I think they like to make inroads, and they've got quality bowlers up front. Chahar is looking to shape it. He didn't get any swing. I think that was the big thing for him. When he swings the ball, he's a real handful. He picks up wickets. They keep that slip and play for as long as possible. Josh Hazlewood, he uses the extra bounce. So it's a nice mix. You've got someone who's a little bit skiddy, shapes it, and then you get a big, tall customer who gets a lot of bounce. The bounce didn't play in their favor today. As AJ touched on, there was 2 top edges and a bottom edge. So the bounce actually worked against them. And sometimes that bounce is what picks up the wickets. So it didn't run for them up front. It'd be interesting sometimes that later on in the evening, you do tend to see the ball swing around. But that surface, I think, looks nice up front. I think Chennai will be looking to try and cash in those first 6 overs, because there was a little bit of purchase for the spinners in the middle overs that just got the ball to stop. And that's why they were so effective.
How much will Delhi, obviously after their batting innings, look at the impact made by Ravindra? And everyone will understand on the show why we are calling him Ravindra and not using his last name, but also Moeen Ali, the impact that they had, Akshar, Ashwin in the Delhi ranks.
Yeah, it was that phase of play that was hard to understand, because there are these two teams, number one and number 2 champion teams. But that phase of play was almost like, they weren't playing like champions, either team. Once you sent Akshar in, maybe, if you wanted to go for a bigger total, if he was throwing his bat around, I could understand. So, he was just, taking whatever he was getting. And I think Dhoni was very happy. I mean, he got through Ravindra's 3 overs at that stage. He got Moeen Ali's couple of overs at that stage. So it was a waiting game that was going on, eventually won by CSK at that stage. And I think CSK waited longer for one more mistake that never came back. Spinners, both did their part. They weren't under any pressure at any stage. I think spinners, with what we see now with IPL in this format, is that when a spinner's field threatened to be hit for 6s by the batsman, or he is capable of hitting it, then they bowl differently. But when they are sure that this guy is not taking any chance, then suddenly there's no pace on the ball, and then you get those dot balls. And that's the kind of play that you had for those 5-6 overs in that middle of the stage, which I don't think will happen with CSK, because they will probably play it differently. But they will need to have a better start. If you don't have wickets in hand, then you will have no choice. But I doubt that if they're 2 down at whatever stage Akshar walked in, there'll be no holding back at that stage by CSK for sure.
Yeah. Shaun, you see the same kind of impact? I mean, was the impact of Moeen and Jadeja on that opposition just because they were sort of sitting back a little bit, because it didn't really appear to assist the spinners in the conventional sense?
Yeah, it was a surprise, Akshar's introduction. I get the point of trying to lengthen the batting lineup and making sure those guys come a little bit later. But I suppose you're never out there, you're never facing it, so we're not too sure if it was just holding up a bit or just a little bit of purchase that made it difficult. I think sometimes also when you've got a short boundary, long boundary, you can overthink things as a batsman. You're so caught up in whether you should or shouldn't go to the small boundary or the big boundary. that it can often damper the way you're trying to approach things. So quality spinners in the Delhi opposition, Ashwin and Aksa are class guys. So it'll be interesting to see how CSK decide to tackle them. There's a lot of right-handers in their batting lineup, CSK. So you might see Aksa actually start in the power play and see if he can put them under pressure that way.
Yeah, we've seen him account for fast. We've seen, of course, the big South African fast bowlers account for Ruturaj Gaikwad with the short delivery. Robin Uthappa, untried in that sense in that middle order. So, Ajay, the plus and the minus for Chennai is that opening partnership has been the most prolific for them in history. So that will be the plus. I mean, that's something. And the minus is, yes, we're calling them chasing champions. They have not chased over 157 in this leg so far successfully.
Yeah, they are chasing champions, and their captain is probably the leader in there, and he's probably the weakest link at the moment. With the form that he's going through, or the touch that we've seen. So maybe that's the case. But if that strength that you just showed, if that opening partnership gets you to a good start, then I think they still manage it, because you still haven't used the entire resources available to you. Post Dhoni, there is still Bravo, Ravindra. You got Shardul, and don't forget that Deepak Chahar just won us India's last T20 game India ever played. He was 60 not out and won the game there. So there's enough batting there. The problem is not the skill. I think it's the timing that whether if they start thinking like what Delhi did and Akshar goes in or try something different, then I'd be disappointed with that. But I think you've got a target in front. The only way I see CSK not getting there is if they're 30 or say 50 for 3 or something. If they get to 50 with one down, no matter what stage of what number of overs, they've got enough in their bank to get to this total.
Yep, fair enough. Key wickets up front, Shaun, which are you still very much blue at this stage?
Yeah, I think they do need to pick up wickets. As I said, I think there will be a lot of discussion about these two. They've been very good at tempering the innings, these two up front, not always going too hard up front when they don't have to, just pacing the chase so that they have the wickets in hand. So I think if you can put pressure on 3 and 4, so Uthappa and Moeen Ali are the ones who are going to have to come in not in great touch, and they're going to have to make the play. I think that's when Delhi's starting to win the game. But if one of those top two can manage to bat until the 10th over, then I think Chennai will start to believe.
Let's just remind you of one more stat. Yes, most successful pair in history, but in this season, against this opposition, they've done nothing. They have to change that right here, right now. There it is one more time if you have to see it. Don't see it if you're a Chennai fan right now. Just think of everything they've done against all other opposition. Pretend they're not Delhi and they'll sort themselves out. One last order of business, gentlemen. 172 meant we don't have a winner. I'm not participating. It's between the two of you. Power play score. That's our super over to decide our winner. Ajay, 6th over. What will CSK be?
41, 42, 41. Let's keep it at
41. Odd number. Come on, Shaun. Higher, lower?
Okay, I'll go 47.
41, 47. Obviously, it's got to be within 5 runs of that on the other side. So they score 60 or 20. Then we've got to have another tiebreaker at the end. That's all for now. We'll keep going. That's the fun of this game. But it's all up to Chennai to try and keep wickets and all.